Bend over to your right.
What the was that?
What's up, Bears fans? People want to hear me talk. What's going on, Bears fans, and welcome to another episode of the Nicholas Moreano Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Moreano. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and of course, share this fellow YouTube channel with all of your Bears fans' friends. And then we also are on all your podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. So go leave a review on there as well. For this week 3 edition, I have a special guest for you guys, Joe Hoyt, who covers the Dallas Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News. He's going to give you everything you need to know about this week 3 matchup. Matt Eberflus, he returns. How's that defense looking for the Cowboys? Dak Prescott, he's looking really good through the first 2 weeks of this season. Joe details what is working well so far for Dallas and that offense, and then just everything else you need to know for this week 3 matchup. Here's my conversation with Joe Hoyt. All right, Joe, I am looking forward to this week 3 matchup, Bears, Cowboys at Soldier Field, the return of Matt Eberflus. But, Joe, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm good, man. We got a little bit of some dark clouds here today, and I'm kind of wondering, checking the forecast a little bit for Chicago, about how much dark clouds, maybe I saw scattered thunderstorms as a possibility. Hey, I got a little PTSD because they had a thunderstorm delay in week 1, caused me to only get 30 minutes of sleep that night after they played the Eagles. So I'm a little worried, Nick, I'll be honest with you. But other than that, I'm doing okay.
You know, I wonder if that's a sign. Matt Eberflus coming back, the thunderstorms, the Bears haven't won a game. Who knows? But hopefully the weather holds up for this matchup. I think it would be better for both teams to actually see it on an even playing field with no weather conditions. But Joe, just from your perspective, Cowboys 1-1 in the season. What has just been some of your kind of big takeaways through 2 weeks of this 2025 NFL season for the Cowboys?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question because honestly, if you look at that week 1 game against the Eagles, they're a couple drops away from being 2-0. Frankly, I think one of the big takeaways so far is that Dak Prescott is playing at a level that they expect here in Dallas in terms of the regular season and how they do things, but it is a high level. Dak Prescott right now, he's been very aggressive. I think that's been kind of my big takeaway so far. Brian Schottenheimer calls it a lot of confidence that he has. If you look at his footwork. He's kind of noted as pristine. And a lot of these completions to CeeDee Lamb are in double coverage. The usage of George Pickens and their relationships kind of picking up. So I think in terms of what they're doing offensively, Javonte Williams is looking as good as he did as a rookie right now, but also a different level. It's more physical, more running through contact. I think that's been an early bright spot for them. Defensively, though, this last game left a lot of questions. And I think a lot of internal questions too, frankly. And I think their zone coverage. They ran 100% zone coverage week 1, 95% zone coverage week 2. You guys obviously know in Chicago what a Matt Eberflus defense looks like. Communication is key, and right now there's a lot of miscommunication in that back end. If you watched, there's a reason Russell Wilson had a career day and threw for 450 yards, including a 48-yard touchdown to put them ahead with less than 30 seconds left. Right, this is a team that right now is not communicating well in zone. And I think that's a lot of fear instilled in terms of what this Dallas fan base feels. Brian Schottenheimer says this is something they can fix this week. We talked with Matt Eberflus today. We're going to get a lot of answers, I think, hopefully, in terms of how they're going about fixing this. But until they kind of show me, I kind of find it hard to believe that, frankly, going up against the Chicago offense.
You know, that's interesting that you say that they feel that they can fix things because the Bears are feeling the exact same way defensively. I mean, the NFC Player of the Week has come after playing a Bears defense for each week. And now they get Dak Prescott, who, like you said, has been playing very well. Ben Johnson described it that, he's just a guy that is commanding the entire field. And he went specifically by even with just his cadence. This is a guy that can really command. But I do want to start with Matt Eberflus's defense and just what you've been seeing, because when you look at statistically what they're giving up, top 5 in passing yards and points right now, you said miscommunication is kind of one of the key details that maybe is just missing at this point through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. I kind of say it, and I played high school football too. We played a lot of zone, and I think when you have a lot of guys doing this and then pointing this while in zone coverage, that's not good. They had one play, and it was a fourth quarter touchdown to Wan'Dale Robinson, where the Giants did just a little quick like motion right before the snap, right? Just a little subtle thing with the tight end. And you saw the Cowboys, you saw a lot of communication happen. You saw Reddy Stewart, Bears fans might know, they're in the slot corner last week. He was communicating. You saw Trayvon Diggs start communicating something. You saw Donovan Wilson, their safety, communicating something. And then Wan'Dale Robinson goes untouched down the field 50 yards for a touchdown. So clearly communication is happening, but it's not working. There's a lot of guys not on the same page right now. They're without Jerron Bland last week. They're probably going to be without Jerron Bland this week. And Jerron Bland was a nickel, corner for them in nickel, but also their starting outside corner. Outside of that, a guy that had a lot of wore a lot of hats, a lot of multiplicity to him. He's kind of a quiet guy, but they said his communication skills were key. You wonder if that was maybe a potential impact, but it looked like Reddy Stewart played really well. So long story short, something is amiss right now in the Cowboys zone scheme. It's hard to tell exactly what it is, but in terms of miscommunication, I think that's where probably the root is.
How is the front four looking at this point, Joe? Because when I think back to the Bears in their week 2 matchup, left tackle Braxton Jones struggled mightily against Aiden Hutchinson. So I'm just thinking, the front four for the Cowboys, what have they shown through the first 2 weeks? And do you think they can take advantage possibly against a Bears offensive line that has allowed some pressure through the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's so funny because I think Cowboy fans are just getting sick of hearing this. But man, if Micah Parsons was in this game, that's something where you would be like, oh, that could be a matchup where he could potentially feast. He could have multiple sacks. This guy could have maybe 10 pressures, right? Micah Parsons hasn't been here, obviously. He's now in Green Bay. So good luck, in terms of 2 times a year for the Bears fans. But without him, the Cowboys have struggled to generate pressure. They're doing not a lot of blitzing. They didn't blitz at all in that first game until after a lightning delay, and then they sent 2 corner blitzes, which was kind of a surprise. Long story short, they're trying to get home with 4, and it's not necessarily working right now. They haven't found a solution on the edge in terms of generating pass rush after the Micah Parsons trade. You can make an argument right now. Their best pass rusher has been Kenny Clark coming up the middle and being an inside guy, and he's been fantastic. So the one thing I'll say about the front four, pass rush has been a little non-existent, I would honestly say. I'm curious to see if they start dialing up pressure a little bit. I think they need to, especially with how kind of their secondary has been playing in terms of these deep balls. And I think they're going to have to get after the quarterback and have to get after Caleb Williams. One thing to note is they generate a little bit of better pressure in week 1, but Jalen Hurts just escaped. He was their leading rusher in week 1, not Saquon Barkley for a reason. If Caleb Williams can kind of use that mobility, I think that's a weak spot for the Cowboys. But I'll say this: the Cowboys' run defense has been something that's plagued them for years. You can even argue maybe decades, frankly. I will say the Kenny Clark addition has been huge in that regard. So for your Chicago fantasy people, I might hammer there's Caleb Williams rushes, maybe not the DeAndre Swift rushes this week.
Man, I mean, when you say some of the things that the Cowboys have struggled with, pass rush, like I could look to the Bears on the same exact side. They've done the exact same thing, and they haven't been able to really get the ball going in the run game with DeAndre Swift, and maybe that Caleb Williams, if you're looking for a prop, maybe that might be the one to take. So it's interesting hearing the similarities that both these teams are kind of going through defensively at this point. I have to ask you too about Jack Sanborn. I think that's a guy that a lot of Bears fans loved. And you know what? Actually, when he got his opportunities here with Matt Eberflus, he did some really good things. But any quick thoughts on Jack Sanborn being in the middle of that defense?
Yeah, I mean, because Jack Sanborn, obviously with you guys, was with the Bears, was someone that didn't play often, but when was called upon, things went well, right? And right now he's being asked to take on a bigger role, and it hasn't. I'll say this: it's not been terrible. He's been solid, but I do think that there's been a little bit, people left wanting more, frankly, out of Jack Sanborn. I think for me personally, one thing I kind of was seeing in training camp that I was like, man, I think this guy is kind of anticipation. His run fits in particular, I thought were fantastic during training camp. I thought they looked good in limited action during the preseason. So far, it's almost just been like half a second too late, right? And I think when you're not the elite 4.3 speed guy, they have a guy in DeMarvion Overshown who's hurt until Thanksgiving. And if you go watch this guy play, this is an electric guy, right? Jack Sanborn isn't that. But I kind of saw in training camp, hey, Sanborn is a guy that can be in the right place before everyone else. Therefore, he's going to make plays. I feel like he's just a little bit off in that regard. I think there's just a half a tick too late. And I think that that's where you're kind of maybe seeing some things, kind of not, things that could be TFLs, frankly, turn into 4-yard gains. So
Mm.
again, Jack Sanborn, I think, has been okay. I do think that there's a little bit of wanting more out of him now that he's taking on this bigger role too.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, he had those limited opportunities, made the most of them, but now seeing a bigger role, you kind of see where he's at. Not a bad football player, but you're gonna wish, like you said, he had a little bit more in him. One last thing for the defense for you, Joe. What are you looking forward to seeing from this unit in week 3 that you quite frankly haven't seen through the first 2 weeks, or what are you anticipating or looking forward? Yeah, just looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's a one thing that Brian Schottenheimer has hammered home about Matt Eberflus is that this is a guy who's an elite adjuster. This is kind of the words he used. And it's so funny. Sometimes I say these things, and we've only known Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator and a play caller for 2 games now. And I feel like I'm talking to the choir potentially, or the choir is being like, "Are you sure about that?" Brian Schottenheimer calls him an elite adjuster, and he calls him someone that is multiple, that likes to be multiple. We have not seen multiplicity yet. And I know that there's nuance to zone coverage where, hey, we might be running vision zone or we might be kind of doing a match zone. And obviously there's cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, different kind of coverages, but different fire zones. I just haven't seen a lot of multiplicity so far. And I'm wondering if maybe that is something that just takes time. Obviously, this is now their 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years for the Cowboys. There probably is an adjustment period. And I think that's kind of one thing I have to remind myself in the first quarter of the season, like, hey, this could be just an adjustment period. I'm curious to see when the multiplicity kicks in. Will it happen this week? Will we see more pressure? I think that they might need to dial up, some more 5-man, 6-man pressures in order to get after Caleb Williams and kind of contain him against the secondary right now that's still figuring things out. But that's where my mind goes in terms of what I'm expecting / hoping to see out of a Matt Eberflus defense in week 3.
Yeah, we'll see if he dials up the pressure. I always there's this not even a stat, but someone mentioned, man, wherever Matt Eberflus is gone, Chicago, he gets there, Mac is traded. And then he gets to Dallas, Michael Parsons is traded. You're like wondering what would it look like if he had one of those elite edge rushers, but he doesn't have that, so he has to work with what he has. All right, guys, we got to take a quick time out to thank some of our sponsors, and it starts with Windy City Sports Cards. As you guys know, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you're a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, or Blackhawks, they've got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. In addition to those Chicago-focused items, everybody, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and players. Visit their online store to find exactly what you're looking for to complete your collection or to simply discover a new favorite. Check them out at 312-WindyCitySportsCards.com. That's 312-WindyCitySportsCards.com. And you also have to check out Triumph Drinks. Like Ben Johnson's going to make it happen this season, you guys made this happen. Triumph Drinks is back for month 2 because of your support. And to celebrate, they gave us an even better deal to show you guys some love for supporting the show. When you use the code Nick, here's an update for you. Use the code Nick and now equals Matt Eberflus's winning percentage as the Bears coach. So what you're going to have to do is go to triumphdrinks.com to see exactly how much you're going to save, but it's a little bit more than the 25% that was originally there. But Triumph is clean. It tastes amazing. No sugar, no artificial ingredients. So thank you guys for making this possible. Now enjoy an additional percent off. You can thank Matt Eberflus for that one, but go check them out, triumphdrinks.com. Moving over to the offense now really quickly, Joe. When you were talking about Dak Prescott being aggressive and making some tight window throws, what do you think's kind of allowed that to happen? Is that just the trust that, I mean, it's, Brian Schottenheimer, but like what is it that you think has allowed Dak Prescott to just play at an elite level so early in the season?
It's so funny you say that, Nick, because I literally asked almost verbatim the same exact question with the same phrasing to Brian Schottenheimer because I was curious because if you look at Dak Prescott right now, he leads the NFL in big time throws. 2023, last year was kind of a weird year, funky year, obviously gets hurt pretty early. They did a thing last year right after he signed a $60 million per year deal where they kind of tried to keep him in the pocket and not run him. They wanted to protect that investment, and that did not work. So this year, one thing Dak Prescott, after he tore his hamstring, is prioritized was being very mobile. He ran often. There were plays in training camp where, he'd hand it off to Javonte Williams. You go into a pile, and all of a sudden you see Dak Prescott doing a fake, but then sprinting 40 yards downfield just to sprint. He wanted to be able to run when he needed it. And I think the thing that's allowed him maybe to be aggressive in terms of throwing the ball is just that elite confidence in himself right now. And I think it's the fact that he has two receivers that are kind of in that realm of, hey, if you're covered, you're not really covered. George Pickens really fits the role. He's drawn 3 defensive pass interferences in 2 games, deep defensive pass interferences. So if you're the Chicago corners this year, one of the teach tape things is, hey, do not get your hands on George Pickens when the ball's in the air, because clearly that's not working out well for opposing defenses in terms of either him making plays or defensive pass interferences. And CeeDee Lamb is just kind of, he's had the drops, but that's still a guy that he trusts, a lot. So I think that there's just a lot of confidence there. But I think the running thing, I think the mobility has also allowed him to feel free and kind of in the pocket and not tight and not stressed out. It's funny because he's not fast anymore. He's not Mississippi Dak Prescott anymore. But because he's been so mobile, he's been able to kind of escape the pocket multiple times. He's got this weird, if you kind of look at the T between average depth of target and time to throw, he's in this weird place where his depth of target's really, really high, but his time to throw is not that high. And that's because he's kind of making plays when there's not there and pushing the ball downfield. Long story short, I expect him to be aggressive, barring weather, once again against Chicago.
Yeah, no, I expect him to be aggressive as well, especially with how the Bears secondary played against Detroit in week 2 and Tyreek Stevenson for Cowboys fans. If you're looking for potential big plays, we got to see how number 29 for the Bears responds. Actually, speaking of responding, what did you see from CeeDee Lamb after week 1, where there were some drops towards the end of that game, like you mentioned earlier, and then going into week 2, but just the wide receivers as a whole, like what was the response you saw from him? And did that maybe, I don't know, have those, you go through those obstacles early on to then be, I mean, CD is one of the best receivers in the league, but what was the kind of response you saw from him after that?
Yeah, CD's kind of had this track record of he's had some of his best games after some of his worst games. And it's so funny because, he had 3 pivotal drops against the Eagles in week 1. And maybe if he catches 1 or 2 of those, they might win that game, right? So that's, but he still had over 100 yards receiving that game, right? And I think right now with CD, this is just going to be a guy that's going to be a high volume target. And usually, especially when the ball's in his hands, will make plays. He had another drop in week 2, though, which I thought was interesting, where, and maybe this is just me reading too deep into things, but it was the second week in a row where he had a drop where it goes like this, right? Ball goes right through his hands and hits him in the face, like directly in the face. And I'm like, that's just kind of a weird thing for a guy who's got good hands to have twice. So maybe part of me wonders if we might see a little more drops than expected this whole season. Something just seems a little amiss there. But after that Philly game, the next day, that Friday, they were off that day. He was at the facility catching, the only guy at the facility catching on the jugs machine. He spent, roughly an hour out there. Sunday, they had an off day too while everyone else was playing in week 1. He was out there running routes, getting some extra work in. This is a guy that, when things don't go right, he wants to correct them immediately. So you're going to get a motivated CeeDee Lamb. You're probably going to get a high volume target and a guy who's going to get a lot of yards. I'm just curious to see if that drops kind of issue a little bit, it becomes an issue or a trend.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense there. And when you look at the offensive line through the first 2 weeks, Joe, what's just been your assessment of them? Like I told you earlier, the Bears haven't been able to generate much of a pass rush, whether trying to blitz or bring just the front 4. What has been your assessment of the O line? How have they kind of stacked up so far?
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is probably, I think is great to hear for Cowboys offensive line, because right now they've gone up an Eagles defensive front who's fantastic, and then went up against the Giants defensive front who, the Giants are not a good team, right? But that defensive front is one of the top defensive fronts in the NFL. They are fantastic. So I think that kind of hearing that's probably good news for the Cowboys. I'll say this. I thought the biggest X factor for this entire season, Dak Prescott aside, obviously quarterback's a big thing. If you're healthy, great. If you're not, I thought it was Tyler Guyton, their, last year's first round pick. Last year, he was, for a lack of a better term, almost a turnstile. And if he wasn't kind of letting pressures happen, he was holding. He had, one of the highest penalty numbers in the NFL, despite only starting about 10 games. It wasn't a good season for a guy who was very raw. And he kind of acknowledged that. And this offseason, he was diligent. He changed his diet. He started doing a stretching routine every day. He reached out to Tyron Smith. He did a lot of work on himself in order to, kind of try to be better. And so far, he's been a lot better. Week 1, I thought he was good. He was solid, right? Week 2, he took a step back against the Giants pass rush. But I'll say this: even the fact that he kind of struggled a little bit at times against the Giants, that is just monumentally such a huge step for him that allows the rest of the offense to kind of work well, right? I will say if they're weak at 2 points, it's the edges. So guy in terms of pass rush, guy in Terrence Steele. And then one factor, Cooper Beebe, their starting center, is out for 6 to 8 weeks. But they do have a lot of confidence and trust in backup Brock Hoffman, who has played, has 9 starts in 3 seasons at center and guard. He's tough. He's nasty. You're probably going to see him either get a 15-yard penalty at one point in this game for for something after the play, or at least kind of teeter that line. He is a trash talker, a spark plug, and that honestly also has an effect on the rest of the offensive line. I think they feed off it. So just one thing to know: whoever's going up against them inside, you're going to get some trash talk. Just FYI.
I like that. I mean, I think the Bears could use a little bit more of that aggressiveness on the O-line through the first 2 weeks, just from what we've been seeing on film here. Against the Giants, there was a lot of drives where Cowboys ended with field goals. I mean, it ended up winning the game there. Is there a common thread of what was kind of going on there, or just kind of your assessment of why that ended up being field goals instead of maybe touchdown drives?
Yeah. I think it's funny because Brandon Aubrey has become so good, their kicker, and has become so trustworthy, not only from 50 yards, but from 65 yards, that I do think that there is a level of contentment once they get to a certain point of, hey, okay, let's maybe not push the ball downfield on 3rd and 8 here because, and I talk about being aggressive with Dak, right? But I'm wondering if there's a certain contentment with 3rd and 8, let's just run some drag routes, maybe try to get some yak and hope for the best here. Otherwise, we got Brandon Aubrey. They call him Butter. Obviously, we got Butter back there. It's fine. And I mean, he's been able to deliver. Brandon Aubrey 6 of 6 this season. Obviously, had the 64-yarder to send in overtime. Had the game winner in overtime as a walk-off. This is a guy that's going to be a free agent next season. I have a story actually in today's Dallas Morning News about how much money he's about to get paid and what that extension is going to look like. Long story, or spoiler alert, he's going to be the highest paid kicker in the NFL when that happens. But I do think that there's some contentment with just letting Brandon Aubrey cook, right? And when the weather is a factor. But this is a guy that they have immense trust in, and someone I think that they have no problem kicking from long distances. Nick, I'll explain this really quickly. So with the new kickoff rules, 35 yards touchback, right? And Kevontae Turpin is their kick returner, who might be the best kick returner in the NFL. So you kind of have to pick your poison a little bit. Hey, do we kick it to Turpin and allow him to maybe have a return that gets past 35, or do we just cut our losses, kick it to them, and let them go to 35? Well, for Brandon Aubrey, if the Cowboys then get 10 yards, 1 first down, they might be in field goal position. A little bit different in Chicago with the weather, but especially if the wind's at their back, if they get 1 first down, they might be in field goal position. So it's kind of something I think that they're just content with a little bit, to be honest with you.
I mean, that's a weapon. I mean, that is a legitimate weapon that if you don't get that touchdown, hey, at least you're almost guaranteed, here's 3 points. And you'll take that if you don't want to go empty on drive. So that makes a lot of sense to me, Joe. When you're looking at this game, I don't know if you have already thought about who's winning or losing, but do you think the Cowboys get their second victory of the season against the Bears at Soldier Field?
I do. And I don't think I think it's going to be, especially with what you're telling me, Nick, it's almost making me feel a little bit more confident in this. I kind of think it's going to be a high scoring game. And again, weather dependent. Obviously, that can muddy, literally everything up a little bit. I just see this Cowboys defense having some issues right now that are going to plague them for a while, frankly. I think the lack of a pass rush is concerning. I think, especially when you're not willing to kind of send multiple guys. I think the zone communication issues are tough. I think miscommunication can be the root of a lot of problems, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's football. And I think that that's not something that's easily fixed. Maybe they have to go to couples therapy, the entire secondary and get some communication done because they're miscommunicating right now. And I just see an offense with the Cowboys that is clicking. I see a quarterback who is playing at his 2023 level when he was the MVP runner-up. I see an addition in George Pickens that is having kind of a multiplicity effect on other guys in terms of getting them open. Um, I think I just see a high scoring game. I see Caleb Williams being able to move and run, and if he can make plays off of that, I think that they're going to have some success. And last thing, I talk about these miscommunication errors, right? I think it generates a lot of chaos when there's miscommunication. When
Mhm.
I think of Ben Johnson, and I don't know how, I haven't, we obviously score wise haven't seen it yet, but when I think of Ben Johnson, I think of someone who likes to manufacture chaos. I think of someone who likes to do quick motions, kind of change the
Mhm.
picture up, likes to kind of say, hey, you think we're going this way? Aha, we're going this way. I think that could be a bad matchup for the Cowboys, but I think their offense is going to be too good to to be overcome. So give me like a 31-24, a 28-24, something, maybe up there. I think I could see something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's where I'm kinda at right now, Joe. Like, it's high scoring and, obviously, if the weather is not a factor there, but when I look at both these 2 teams, like, at least I know the Cowboys, their offense is clicking. The Bears, they've had spurts of it. Defensively, they have a lot of things that they still need to figure out, and same thing for the Cowboys, but at least out of all those things, the Cowboys have something that they know they can kind of fall back on. And then you mentioned Brandon Aubrey. Like that is a kicking situation that you want. Cairo Santos, he's already missed the field goal this year. Like he's had some kickoffs that have gone out of bounds, and when you're not intentionally trying to do that. So it's like there are a couple of things right now. Actually, there's more than a couple of things that are just not going in the Bears' way. So I am leaning towards a Cowboys victory. I haven't quite made it there yet. I probably will by the end of this show, but that's where I'm kind of leaning. But Joe, hey man, this was one great insight, great catching up with you. And are you going to be at Soldier Field on Sunday?
I'll be there at Soldier Field, so I'll see you there, huh?
Yeah, I'll see you there. It should be a fun one. Hopefully, we don't have to bring any umbrellas for what ends up happening in Chicago later that day. But hey, everyone needs to go check out Joe Hoyt's all of his work on Dallas Morning News, the new Brandon Aubrey story that should be coming out. And is there anywhere else that we can follow you and just all your work that you're going to do throughout the entire 2025 season?
Yeah, you got the handle down there, just social media. I'm very active on Twitter. I had a picture. Brandon Aubrey was in kind of this little foresty thing, at their practice facility yesterday, and he looked like Bigfoot. So I tweeted out a picture of Bigfoot and him. So big leg and Bigfoot. Anyways, long story short, I have some bad puns. If you want to check that out, that'd be awesome.
Love it, Joe. Appreciate you hopping on here, and then I will see you on Sunday, my man.
Yeah, good to see you, Nick.
All right, everybody. That was my conversation with Joe Hoyt. Provided great perspective analysis on the Dallas Cowboys, what it's going to take advantage of some of their weaknesses, how the Bears can maybe take advantage offensively against a defensive line that hasn't created much pressure, but vice versa. Their defensive line may be something that's also looking to take advantage of a Bears offensive line that has given up some pressure, some sacks through the first two weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. But look, I have to also give my final prediction for this game. And the Bears are struggling, especially after week two's loss against the Detroit Lions, 52-21. A lot of bad tape out there. Hopefully, a lot of teaching tape going into this week three matchup. But the Bears are desperate, man. They need to avoid going 0-3 to start the season. And this Dallas Cowboys team, I think, can be had defensively. So Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, this offense, I think they can take advantage of the miscommunication that Joe was talking about and put up some points. And then defensively, we just need to see a much better effort, a more spirited effort in every single way to stop a guy like Dak Prescott, who's having a fantastic start to the NFL season. Maybe this is just me being a little bit of a homer, but I'm gonna give the Bears the victory here. I had this game if the weather isn't terrible, raining, thunderstorming, things like that, high scoring, 31-28. Bears just get the victory. But if the Cowboys win, I wouldn't be surprised if it is more like a 35-28 type of game. Especially if the defense doesn't show any type of improvement. But for the sake of this show, for you guys, this prediction, Bears win this one 31-28, and you can tell just by watching or maybe hearing my voice how confident I am in saying that. Not very, but the Bears, it's a desperate team, man. You need to get a victory here before going to Las Vegas to face the Raiders with a victory, hopefully, and maybe start the first quarter of the season 2-2 as opposed to 0-3, 0-4, which would be an absolute disaster to start the Ben Johnson era. So we'll see if the Bears can get it done against their former head coach, Matt Eberflus, and the defensive coordinator there in Dallas and get their first victory of the season. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. And that's the type of content you can come to expect from myself at the Nicholas Moreano Show. Great guests, great analysis. Keep it lighthearted, keep it fun, but also be critical and, just provide what I believe is expert analysis on this football team. But that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and then the audio listeners as well. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and really anywhere you can get your podcast. Leave a review, rate the show. That's going to help put this Bears show in all the algorithms with all the other Bears shows. So really appreciate you guys. We'll see if the Bears can get a victory on Sunday. But until then, adios, Bears fans.
Bend over to your right. What the was that?
What's up, Bears fans?
People want to hear me talk.